Hi, this is John Johnson at Secrets of Home Theater and High Fidelity. We're beginning a new project called Stereo Audio and Home Theater 101 Plus. It's aimed at those of you who don't have a good stereo system or home theater and you're thinking about setting one up but you don't know where to begin. Well, we're going to show you how to do that right here. If you are building your new home theater and are using your main stereo speakers for the front, left, and right channels for watching movies, you obviously have speaker cables connected. They might be some expensive cables like these Claris that I use for my stereo listening. I also have a pair of Wire World cables on my stereo pair of Martin Logan electrostatic speakers in my 2-channel stereo test lab. They're huge. For your home theater, however, you probably would have a hard time pulling large diameter speaker cables like these through the walls and ceiling for the other speakers such as the rear, surrounds, and height speakers. Secondly, you probably don't want to spend the same amount of money for cables connecting all of these other speakers. I didn't either. So I did some research, and after going through a lot of smaller and less expensive cables, I found some that satisfied my needs. They are branded as Garrett 12-gauge cables and are available on Amazon. Here is the product page. You can purchase them singly, which is good, such as for a 6-foot cable to my center channel speaker. They have the gold-plated plugs that I mentioned previously, which means good electrical contact that won't oxidize over time. I bought a 25-foot cable in white for the left width speaker and a 10-foot cable in black for the right width speaker. Don't be obsessive about having the same length for the left and right speakers for a particular pair of channels. You don't want to end up with way too much length on one side that is not used, since it would mean coiling it up. Use a tape measure to calculate the length that you need, including going down from the power amplifier to the floor and along the wall to the speaker and up from the floor to the speaker. One thing that really impressed me about the terminations is that there is a side pin that results in a very tight fit, which is good. You can see the side pin in the photo. You can connect these cables to the banana jacks in 2 different ways. One way is to plug them straight into the jack as seen in the left banana jack in the photo. The other way is to loosen the jack by unscrewing it and inserting the pin in the hole at the bottom of the jack bolt as seen in this photo for the jack on the right. Then you tighten the jack. This will form a very tight connection, and I would recommend this for connecting any speakers that you mount on the wall or ceiling, regardless of which type of cable you purchase. For speakers where you run the cable along the ceiling rather than inside the ceiling, I would recommend using 12-gauge cable that has clear insulation so that it is not so conspicuous. You can get this cable and banana plugs to go with it at monoprice. You can also just use the 12-gauge clear cable for all the wiring. I hired an installer to run this cable for me inside the wall to my rear speakers. I doubled it up so that each pair of wires was connected together to supply each of the 2 legs. This took care of the increased impedance of the cable that was running such a long length up inside the wall, inside the ceiling, and down inside the wall to the speakers. Doubling the wire decreases the impedance by half. This is important because if your speakers are 8 ohms nominal, which means average impedance, and you had long cables of higher gauge, which means smaller diameter, you might end up with cables of 2 ohms impedance, which would steal power from your amplifier. So do it correctly from the beginning and double them up for long lengths. Regarding expensive audio cables, there is much controversy as to whether they are effective in improving the quality of sound compared to inexpensive cables. I have seen double-blind studies where the listeners preferred the expensive cables over the inexpensive ones, studies where listeners preferred the inexpensive cables, and studies where there was no significant preference for either cable. Expensive audio cables generally do have very complex geometry of the conductors, and they are expensive because the machines that extrude unusually shaped conductors have to be custom built and are extremely expensive because of this. The high cost of the conductor extruders has to be passed on to the consumer. However, the jury remains out as to any consistency in expensive cables always sounding better than the inexpensive ones. Now that you have saved so much money on some of the cables for your 13 speakers in your Dolby Atmos home theater, use some of that money for a nice lunch. Thanks for watching.